close your eyes for a moment. Imagine a morning where the milkman has already left 2 glass bottles on your porch before you even wake up. Your mom is ironing clothes in the kitchen while the radio plays. Your dad is reading an actual newspaper, ink on his fingers. And your biggest worry today is whether you'll make it home before the streetlights come on. That world was real. It wasn't a movie. It wasn't a dream. It was America. And somewhere between then and now, between the rotary phones and the corner drugstores, between the drive in theaters and the handwritten letters, we lost something. Not just things, a whole way of life. Today, we're going back to 25 things that were once completely normal in America, but are gone today. Some of them will make you smile. Some will make you ache. All of them will remind you this was real life. Before there was DoorDash, before there were grocery delivery apps, there was a man in a white uniform who came to your door before sunrise. The milkman was as reliable as the sun itself. Glass bottles clinking on your porch every morning, and fresh. Families left notes in the empty bottles. 2 quarts today. Extra cream this week. It wasn't just a delivery. It was a relationship. By the 1960s and 70s, supermarkets and refrigeration slowly pushed him out of the picture. And just like that, his face in the neighborhood disappeared. Invention. There was a time in this country when locking your front door at night felt almost rude. Like you were telling your neighbors you didn't trust them. In small-town America, especially through the 1950s and into the 60s, front doors stayed open all day. Screen doors let the summer breeze in, and nobody thought twice about it. Kids wandered in and out of each other's homes like they owned them. A neighbor might walk in just to borrow a cup of sugar and stay for coffee. Kind of easy trust. That bone, deep sense of safety, feels almost unimaginable today. Before every American had a phone in their pocket, millions of families shared a single telephone line with their neighbors. It was called party line, and when you picked up the receiver to make a call, you might hear your neighbor already mid-conversation. The etiquette was simple. You waited your turn. Sometimes you listened. Not that anyone would admit it. These shared lines created an accidental community. You knew your neighbors' voices, their habits, their lives. Privacy was traded for connection. And looking back, maybe that wasn't such a bad deal. Long before Walgreens and CVS swallowed every corner in America, the neighborhood drugstore was the heartbeat of the community. You could get your prescription filled, buy a birthday card, and then sit down at a long marble counter and order a chocolate malt. All in the same place. Soda jerk behind the counter knew your name. He knew you took your sundae with extra cherries. Teenagers had their first dates there. Elderly couples had their afternoon coffee there. It was pharmacy, diner, and living room all in one. When the chains moved in, the soda fountain moved out, and something irreplaceable went with it. A summer Friday night in 1957, you pull the family station wagon into a gravel lot as the sky turns orange. You hang a metal speaker on the window, and as darkness falls, a giant white screen flickers to life. Kids are already in their pajamas in the back seat. Mom has a bag of popcorn from the concession stand. At their peak in 1958, there were over 4,000 drive-in theaters across America. They were places of pure magic. Outdoor living rooms, where the whole family could be together under the stars. Today, fewer than 300 survive. The land was worth more than the memories, they decided. They were wrong. For most of American history, Sunday was Sunday. Stores closed. Businesses shut. The whole country, whether you were religious or not, took a collective breath. Families were forced to be together because there was simply nowhere else to go and nothing to buy. These were called blue laws, rooted in the idea that one day a week should belong to rest and community. You'd see entire downtown streets empty on a Sunday morning, quiet as a church. Today is just another shopping day. But back then, the stillness itself was a kind of gift, a reminder that life was more than commerce. There are few sounds more purely American than the tinny, looping melody of an ice cream truck working its way down a residential street on a hot July afternoon. Kids would at 2 blocks away and come running, screen doors slamming, bare feet on hot pavement, nickels and dimes clutched in sweaty hands. The ice cream man was a neighborhood legend. He knew which kid always got the creamsicle, which one always agonized over the decision. For a few coins, you got a frozen treat and a minute of pure childhood happiness. The trucks still exist in some places. That whole neighborhood sprint, that's mostly gone now. Every American home had a junk drawer with envelopes and a book of stamps. Writing a letter was a serious act. You chose your words carefully, because crossing them out looked sloppy. You addressed the envelope in your best handwriting. You licked the stamp and walked it to the mailbox. And then you waited, sometimes a week, sometimes more. When a letter arrived, it meant someone had sat down and thought of you and given you their time and attention on paper. People saved their letters, tied them in ribbon, tucked them in shoe boxes. They were proof that someone loved you enough to slow down. In the 1950s and 60s, 5:30 or 6 o'clock meant one thing in America: dinner. Every member of the family at the table. No TV, no distractions. Just food and conversation, and the daily ritual of being a family together in one room. Dad talked about work. Mom talked about the neighborhood. Kids talked about school, or tried to avoid talking about school. Fights happened there too. Tears happened. Laughter happened. The table wasn't just where you ate. It was where you knew each other. Studies today show most American families eat together fewer than 3 times a week. Something fundamental shifted when we left that table. Pulling into a gas station used to mean sitting back and letting someone else handle everything. An attendant in a uniform. Sometimes 2 or 3 of them would jog out to your car before you'd even turned off the engine. They pumped your gas, checked your oil, cleaned your windshield, checked your tire pressure, all without being asked. This was just service, the baseline expectation. Many stations had mechanics on duty too. You built a relationship with your gas station the way you built a relationship with your barber. Service era began in the 1970s as a cost-cutting measure. We saved a few cents per gallon, and we lost something we didn't know we'd miss. In the early morning quiet, before school, before work, a boy on a bicycle would cut through the neighborhood, throwing newspapers with practiced precision onto front porches and driveways. Paperboy was an institution. He was often your kid, or the kid next door, learning his first lessons in responsibility and work. He collected payments door to door at the end of the month, sometimes with a little leather satchel for the coins. He got Christmas tips. He knew which houses were on vacation and held the papers. That first job for so many American boys is almost entirely extinct today, and with it went a certain kind of growing up. If you grew up in America before 1990, you know the rule. It wasn't written down. It didn't need to be. When the streetlights flickered on at dusk, you went home, no argument, no negotiation. Everything between sunrise and that moment was yours. Kids roamed the neighborhood on bikes. They built forts in the woods. They played kick the can until they could barely see the can, dirty and scraped and sunburned and wonderful. No GPS, no cell phones, no check-ins. Just childhood, fullest, freest form. Today, that kind of freedom feels almost reckless. Says everything about how much has changed. Woolworths, Crestches, McCrory's. Every American town had one. Were the 5 and dime stores, where almost everything cost a nickel or a dime, and a child could spend an afternoon with 50 cents and feel like royalty. You could buy a goldfish, a bag of candy, a comb, sheet music, and a pair of socks all in one long, wonderful aisle. The lunch counter ran right through the middle. The floors were wooden and creaky. These stores weren't just retail. They were the town square, the gathering place, day afternoon destination. The last Woolworths closed in 1997. An era ended quietly. It sounds almost impossible today, but for most of the 20th century, Americans smoked everywhere. On airplanes, in hospitals, in offices, in movie theaters, in school buildings. There was a time when a doctor might light a cigarette during your appointment. No smoking section didn't exist until 1973. One airline, American Airlines, first tried it on certain flights. Even then, smoke drifted freely between sections. Ashtrays were built into the backs of airplane seats, into armrests at the ballpark, into hospital waiting room chairs. This world existed, and if you were born after 1990, you simply cannot imagine it. Before Google, before Wikipedia, before anything with a screen, there was the Encyclopedia. A full set of World Book or Britannica volumes lined the family bookshelf like monuments to knowledge. They were expensive. Parents saved up for them. Salesmen came door to sell them. When you needed to know something, anything, you pulled out the right volume, found the right page. Read. Doing a book report meant spreading 6 encyclopedia volumes across the kitchen table and taking notes by hand. The smell of those pages, the weight of those books. That was the entire internet, it on paper, and it was enough. Before the milkman, there was the iceman. In the early 1900s, before mechanical refrigeration, reached most homes, a man came to your door hauling enormous blocks of ice with iron tongs. You had an icebox, literally a wooden cabinet with a compartment for ice and a lower compartment to keep food cold. Iceman's arrival was a neighborhood event. Kids would chip off pieces to suck on in the summer heat. Families budgeted for ice the way they budgeted for coal. By the 1940s, electric refrigerators had pushed the iceman out. But for a generation of Americans, he was as necessary as the air they breathed. Walk into a department store in the 1920s through the 1960s, and you'd witness something almost magical. You'd hand your cash to a sales clerk, and instead of making change from a drawer, she'd slip your money into a small cylinder and send it flying through a pneumatic tube system up to a central cash room somewhere in the building. In seconds, the tube would return with your change and a receipt. Network of tubes ran through the walls and ceilings of grand stores like Macy's and Marshall Field's. It was efficient, it was honest, it was spectacular, and it was gone by the 1980s, replaced by electronic registers. Progress has a cost. Long before television captured the American living room, the radio owned it. In the 1930s and 40s, families gathered around the radio set the way we gather around screens today. But together, in one room, listening as one. President Roosevelt delivered his fireside chats, and Americans listened with complete, quiet attention. The Lone Ranger rode across the airwaves. Soap operas played in the afternoons. Boxing matches drew entire neighborhoods together to listen at the same set. Radio demanded imagination. You saw everything in your mind. That active listening, imagination. It was a kind of intimacy the television slowly replaced. Before you could dial a number yourself, you picked up the receiver, and an operator answered. A real human being, usually a young woman, sitting at a massive switchboard. You'd say the name of the person you wanted to reach, and she'd connect you by hand, plugging wires into the right ports. In small towns, operators knew everyone. They'd know which doctor to call in an emergency. They'd relay urgent messages. They were the town's nervous system, the living, breathing infrastructure of communication. Automatic dialing began replacing them in the 1920s and accelerated through the mid-century. The last manual telephone exchange in America switched over in 1983. A voice went silent. "The circus is coming! The circus is coming!" Those words could make every child in a county vibrate with anticipation for weeks. The arrival of a traveling circus, Ringling Brows, Barnum and Bailey, or a dozen smaller outfits, was one of the great American events of the first half of the 20th century. Trains would pull into the rail yard before dawn. Elephants would help raise the big top. By morning, a city of colorful tents had appeared from nowhere. Acrobats, clowns, lions, tightrope walkers. Things most rural Americans might never see otherwise. The circus brought the world to your town. And when it packed up and left, it took a little piece of the wonder with it. He arrived at your door with a suitcase, sometimes two, and a smile that could light up a front porch. Traveling salesman was a fixture of 20th century American life, selling everything from vacuum cleaners to encyclopedias to brushes to insurance. He often traveled by train or bus, covering territories that spanned hundreds of miles. For isolated farm families, he was sometimes the only outside contact for weeks. He brought news, gossip, and goods from the wider world. There was a whole culture built around him. Jokes, suspicions, and genuine gratitude. By the 1970s, retail chains and telephone sales had made him obsolete. He closed his suitcase for the last time and didn't come back, words that could stop a heart or fill one with joy. For a century, telegram was how America sent urgent news across distances. A uniformed messenger boy would arrive at your door, hat in hand, with a small yellow envelope. News came by telegram. B.B. Born. Motarfi. Terrible news did too. And during World War II, families dreaded the sight of that messenger coming up their walk. Telegrams had a formality that even the most important letter couldn't match. Every word cost money. Every word mattered. Western Union sent its last telegram in 2006. It was the end of an era that most people didn't even notice had ended. Before multiplexes, before stadium seating, before a dozen screens under one roof, there was the movie theater. One screen, one show at a time, and the building itself was something to behold. With ornate lobbies, painted ceilings, velvet curtains, and ushers in uniforms who showed you to your seat with a flashlight. The neighborhood movie palace was a temple. Going to the pictures meant dressing up. Children sat in hushed reverence as the newsreel played before the feature. The whole community watched the same film on the same night. That shared experience. Hundreds of people laughing and gasping together in the dark. Can't be replicated on a phone screen. Every autumn across America, a school nurse would set up in a small office and march through every classroom with a list. One by one, children stood at the marked spot on the floor and covered one eye and read letters from a chart on the wall. F. P. L. She also checked for head lice, measured your height and weight, tested your hearing. She was not glamorous. She was not exciting. But she was the first line of health care for millions of American children whose parents couldn't always afford a doctor. Nurse knew every kid by name and by ailment. She was quiet, essential, and largely taken for granted until she was gone. Last one isn't a service or a store or a technology. It's harder to name. Everyone who grew up in mid-century America, through its struggles and its contradictions, seems to share a memory of it. It was a feeling, a baseline confidence, a sense that the country was going somewhere. That hard work led to a better life. Your neighbors had your back. That the future was something to look forward to rather than brace against. Whether that feeling was always justified is another conversation. But it was real to the people who felt it. And when you talk to those who lived it, they'll tell you that feeling was the most precious thing of all. And it's the thing they miss most. Some of them we let go of because we had to. Progress moves forward and doesn't wait for sentiment. Some of them we gave up too easily, traded for convenience, or efficiency, or speed. And some of them, the best of them, we simply forgot to protect. The milkman who knew your name. The door you never locked. The summer evening when a porch and a glass of lemonade was enough entertainment for the whole night. Weren't perfect times. America never has been. But inside these ordinary moments, the shared phone lines and the Sunday silences and the letters tied in ribbon, there was a closeness, a texture to daily life that made people feel woven together. Maybe we can't go back. Maybe we shouldn't try to. Exactly. Perhaps we can take something forward with us. The understanding that convenience is not the same as richness. That speed is not the same as connection, and that the most important things in life are often the quietest. So tonight, maybe leave your phone in another room. Sit at the table with someone you love. Look them in the eye and talk. Really talk. Because someday, someone will look back at this moment. This exact, ordinary Tuesday in your life, and ache for it, the way we ache for ours. Thank you for watching. And if this brought back memories, leave one in the comments. Every one of those memories matters. Every single one.